The next part of the program, if Stephen is there, I'm going to be introducing Stephen in a moment. But we're going to do something which is a little different than a paper. So I'm going to go to my screen share, the scary part of screen sharing. Conversation that we are going to share 3 ways between Dr. Stephen Porges and Harold Terry Lindahl and myself is called The Science of Being, Moving Beyond Our Natural Attitude.
Oh.
Dr. Porges came to San Francisco, was it a year and a half ago, with his lovely wife, Sue Carter, to view the exhibition of Terry's gestation, history, and potential of man, of humankind, in San Francisco at the Institute. And if you heard Dr. Porges's keynote address on Wednesday, this will be a repeat of his bio, but I encourage anyone who didn't to look at Wednesday's YouTube channel for the recorded talk, the keynote address. Dr. Porges is a distinguished university scientist at Indiana University and is the founding director of the Traumatic Stress Research Consortium. President of the Society for Psychological Research and Federation of Associations in Behavioral and Brain Sciences. He has authored numerous articles and lectured extensively about the implications of modern science. In 1994, Dr. Porges proposed the polyvagal theory, a theory that links the evolution of the mammalian autonomic nervous system to social behavior and emphasizes the importance of physiological state in the expression of behavioral problems and psychiatric disorders. He is the author of The Polyvagal Theory, Neurophysiological Foundations of Emotions, Attachment, Communication, and Self-Regulation, The Pocket Guide to the Polyvagal Theory, The Transformative Power of Feeling Safe, and he is co-editor of the Clinical Applications of the Polyvagal Theory, The Emergence of Polyvagal Informed Therapies. He is also the creator of a music-based intervention, the Safe and Sound Protocol, which is used widely among therapists to improve spontaneous social engagement, reduce hearing sensitivities, assist language processing, and state regulation. In recent years, the polyvagal perspective has spread beyond the field of trauma to other disciplines. We as a society are in the process of realizing we communicate through our nervous systems as much as our intellects. So this is the gestation, history, and potential of humankind told in 7 octaves of 7 aspects: seed, native virtue, indulgent, searching, schoolless, and listening, and evolving man, which is in the lower level of our building. And when Stephen visited, part of this conversation will be, I think, reflecting on how Terry's art transmits visually the science of the polyvagal theory. And here I borrowed a couple of Stephen's slides to show how he has been thinking about Terry's India ink drawings of the three centers in relation to the vital organs, of which the vagus is the conduit, the gyre.
Mm-hmm.
And when he viewed the pensive and vigilant sculptures, 2 9-foot high by 5-foot diameter aluminum core sculptures, they symbolize, in relation to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic functions of the autonomic nervous system, beautifully, I think, in relation to these anatomical drawings, which scientists are using to teach the polyvagal implications. So, Stephen, if I were to ask you to start with the homo hypnon state as an indicator of the first level, would you read Prigogne's quote for us?
I certainly will try. At equilibrium, molecules behave as essentially independent entities. They ignore one another. We would like to call them hypnons, sleepwalkers. However, non-equilibrium states wake them up and introduces a coherence quite foreign to the equilibrium.
Okay, and I will read what Husserl said for the second state, which is the essence individual. Before the apogee, I was a man with a natural attitude, and I lived immersed naively in the world. I was a transcendent ego, even while in the natural attitude, but knew nothing about it. In order to become aware of my true being, I needed to execute the phenomenological apogee. And I'll have Terry now read what Rajiv had to say about the third state.
The human organism represents a chemical factory planned for the possibility of a very large output. But in the conditions of ordinary life, this factory never reaches the full production possible to it. There is, however, a possibility of increasing the output. For this purpose, it is necessary to create a special kind of artificial shock. An artificial shock means a certain kind of effort made at the moment when an impression enters our consciousness.
Now, Terry, I'll have you, if you wouldn't mind, letting our audience know something about the somatic refinement process, which you've illustrated.
What?
Prigogne's quote in relationship to the food diagram.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something?
So, can we bring the food diagram onto the, or?
Do you see it there?
I see part of it there, but you need the whole thing to.
Well, it's.
Bring that on and block out the type.
Well, this is the way the slide is prepared.
No, just, it needs to be on the center of my screen because it.
And Ivan maybe needs to help me.
We're going to.
You not see. That's how it is. We'll move this.
Okay.
Is that better?
No. It was better. We don't need this because it's right here.
Is that?
Okay. Now, what's the what this food diagram is called the somatic refinement of entropy. So this is the way the organism processes food, air, and impressions to finer degrees of vibration. So Gurdjieff adopted a table of hydrogens, which conforms rather closely to the periodic tables of science of the vibration rates or the atomic number of different properties. So we have the digestion of food, the red line, producing enough energy, enough fine energy to reproduce our organism. And there is enough air to oxygenate the blood and enough impressions to keep us in touch with our sentience. Now, so this automatically, nothing here is up to us. We do this automatically. But what we're interested in order to achieve some of Jennifer Gidley's and Maria's questions is the next diagram. So we talk about a person who addresses the process of self-knowledge and is carrying out the inner development which comes about when we make this intentional effort at the moment of receiving an impression. So if I am processing that moment, if I'm able to resist the animal impulse to reinsert itself instantly over any foreign element, and this ineffable energy is a foreign element to the animal, but it's the human element for us. So if we can process this fine energy, then the impressions octave goes to 12, the air octave goes to 12, and the food octave is already at 12. So you have a unified 12 energy, not topographically lapping, but individually intercommunication at the same level of vibrations. So that brings about the state of being that we call an essence individual, somebody that has his own mind and can do what he intends to do and so forth. So where do we go next? Well, put this off the screen. This is impossible. Nobody can do it. Okay. Homo sapiens. So these 312, these three interacting vibrations are installed, you could say, are in situ in our kingdom within. And from these processes, impressions that arrive can be impartially processed, and from this impartial process we can reason objectively. So one of the examples of that is the story of Ptolemaic judgment. How do you solve intractable problems and so forth? So this allows us to begin to operate as responsible citizens of the solar system.
Okay, so I would just like to invite Stephen
Sure.
to have the first response.
Well, thank you, Susannah. So the first question or first point I want to make is that everything, I mean, Terry gave a beautiful presentation and it makes a lot of sense, but it's predicated on an assumption. And the assumption that the system functions efficiently so that you can have this cyvolution. Because if the system is, in a sense, under defense or threat, you don't have cyvolution, you have dissolution of your
Exactly. No.
So, and this is, so you have a wonderful model, including when you start talking about the efficiency of metabolism, the efficiency of energy transfer.
Right.
That's all mediated by a system that can maintain a homeostatic state. And that's also a metaphor, really saying it can efficiently process and translate that energy. But if you put the system under stress and well-defined under threat, the parameters are going to change greatly. And you start deconstructing or decomposing or devolutioning. And so you start getting more primitive people. So that's why the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of society has not been linear, because there have been these disruptions.
Totally.
All survival oriented. And when we talk, and this actually goes back to the first talk really was all about, in a sense, logic thinking and formal processing. How do we structure our educational system?
Right.
The underlying foundation is we make it safe for the individual. We keep the body from having to use its resources to defend. And then we get into actually everything that Terry talked about, which is this efficient way of translating energy into consciousness or thought process. But I think as a society, we've really screwed up. And whether we utilize metaphors like religion as our narrative of excuse, we have to understand what they were used for. There's a functionality to it. And that functionality is not towards individualization, creativity, self-regulation. It's all about which is a devolution and not an evolution.
Right. That's the lie.
Well, I'm still saying we're propagating a lie.
Excuse my jocular nation. I couldn't agree more with you. But the reason I feel that this cyvolutionary process, which is not an invention, which happens. I mean, this moments of self-recognition happen a lot, actually, but we don't recognize them as for what they are. So we go on hypnotically, but when I can recognize these, and this process, cyvolution, isn't called that in the community that I belong to, but it is a scientific condition that answers to all the falsification processes, predictability, explanatory. So I'm trying to say it is a real thing, and I'm not saying you don't agree. You did agree, so we're agreeing with each other and finding what is the line of processing being human.
Yeah, let me interrupt a little bit and say,
Sure, no.
the process, I'm in full agreement, and I have my own metaphors to describe it. But we
Mhm.
have a major problem. The problem is contemporary society.
Yes,
Whether contemporary society supports that process or will injure you if you're involved or committed to that process. And I speak that way as being an academic for more than 50 years.
right.
It's not a safe environment. And just remember, in most of our environment, we're under evaluation, whether we use the term education or if we go in for our health. We are evaluated. Our bodies are placed in a chronic state of threat in situations, whether it's to maintain our health or to, in a sense, enable us to intellectually grow. Those are, in a sense, states of reactions to threat do
Right.
not serve our consciousness well. It doesn't serve our body
No,
well. It
it's-
doesn't serve being a human well. So
Yeah.
it's a violation of the principles of how humans should treat each other.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. We could refer them to pregogens, hypnotic life processes where the reptile disagrees with the mammal and the mammal disagrees with the reptile, and they both disagree with what the rational is telling them, and they're under stress constantly, and nothing is possible. No receipt of this finer energy
Yeah.
is possible in these conditions. I couldn't agree more. And
To support
if
what-
there, this is my solution to it, because we have to start a school of a college of humanology that is teaching this to people that are interested. When you go to college, you pull out the syllabus or whatever it is, and you select, oh, I want to go to the College of Humanology. And you go, you attend class and so forth, and this process is taught. So if we teach enough people on that level that could then begin to pursue their careers in education or whatever.
Well,
This,
I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to, in a sense, kind of retune what you're saying.
good.
The problem, when we use the word teach, immediately we go into a cognitive model of mental exercises. And I think what you're really saying, if you want to be a human being, you have to understand your underlying physiological state, which translates into the world of having feelings, being embodied.
That's right.
Because the educational
That's right.
process is a process of disembodiment, rejecting the feedback from our body that's giving us information. And that's why we get all these so-called psychosomatic illnesses, but they're not
Exactly.
psychosomatic. It's our nervous system telling us we're not supporting it.
Exactly. So this Psyvolution says, over a number, we're talking about a way to live here. We're
Yeah.
not talking a quick, seminar that cures everything. But I learned to live more attentively. Now, the way to do that is by adopting aims, sincerely adopting an aim to, let's say, I'll count 3 once every 30 minutes. You see, so then this Gurdjieff way is called the way of failure, because you will find you can't do that. And you'll see when that happens enough, there begins to be something inside that recognizes that I can't. And then there's a whole processes of how you increase the vibration rate of this inner sense. But the process is that there is that when somebody speaks to me, friendly or not, my reptile immediately decides what's going on there. And then the mammal tries to say, oh, well, you know, and very little rational process comes in there. But if the intellect is vibrating at the rate of the reptile and the mammal, then you can set up the situation where the vibrations of the reptile are received in the inner system, and you have to bear. You see, does this reptile agree with the mammal, agree with the rational? And this inner energy is operating at a speed that it can include all those. So that's what 12 energies speak about, is the ability to let the reptile and the rational influence each other. So that's what I hope for.
Well, I'm going to change the language and carry the same underlying metaphor. You're basically exercising feedback systems in your body, and you're honoring what the body, the receptors, the efferents, as you call them, of the body, and not rejecting them. And our society is about rejecting bodily feelings so that we can free our cognitive functions from their responsibility or their influence from the body.
Well,
the other point that's very relevant to what you were saying is this concept of neuroception, which is a term I developed because I didn't want it to have a level of perception or cognitive awareness. We respond to cues in the environment. Some of the cues are threatening and some are cues of safety. But the reptilian and older systems that we share, we all respond to threat. But what's unique to mammals is that they reflexively, outside of awareness and outside of consciousness, respond to cues of safety.
Homo hypnons.
Yeah. When we do that,
hypnons, not homo.
Right. When we do that, we create accessibility.
That's right.
People, we become safe with each other. We co-regulate, and then evolution can process.
Is possible. I agree, and that might be the moment when things have been going wrong, and I happen to take in the movie like The Matrix, and I see something, you know, and it touches me in a way that's meaningful, not just as an entertainment. Or I read a poem by Thomas Hardy, or even Jesus wrote some fairly beautiful poems, and the information he gives, I think one of the things he said was, you can't pour new wine in old bottles, right? You see, that's, I mean, it's too bad that Christianity doesn't know that.
But
Go ahead.
okay, I was going to say that the adaptive nervous system model is it doesn't like violation of expectancy. It gravitates to what it can predict. So putting old wine in new bottles is this notion of predictability, and this notion of going back to that quote by Porges that I wrote, the disruption to that system is critical for the system to reorganize and change its level of energy or but the nervous system has another, in a sense, protective mechanism in saying that violation of expectancy is potentially threatening. And but this is, it says, also the basis of humor. If you watch a baby, it's a violation of expectancy within a safe environment with the mother. So what we already know is what's part of the curriculum for your new college. It's violation of expectancy all the time within a safe environment. There are no wrong answers.
Well put.
Within the spectrum of what Terry was saying earlier is the Gnostic research and the empirical research, where we are today, in a very pragmatic way. Everything that your research, Stephen, has brought, we recognize is not necessarily self-evident to individuals. So if we're, for instance, going to make a recommendation to UNESCO at this point and say we need to upgrade how higher normative levels of learning can be obtained.
Mhm.
The lecture that you gave on Wednesday is the 101 course of humanology.
That's right.
That would be offered as an adjunct to all the humanities, as you pointed to the overlapping areas of the transdisciplinarity that's naturally involved with what I referred to, and you have as well, the scaffold of what polyvagal theory brings us. Then we also have your Polyvagal Institute, which is working on another front of outside nonprofit work that is, meeting the corridors of education in communities, education in trauma, education in politics, all these areas. And so we're starting to be able to infiltrate what are human rights based on not just principles of philosophy and so on, but actually what Husserl was moving towards, what Merleau-Ponty, in terms of we ourselves are the phenomena. And Terry's work with his exhibition, which you saw, would be worth commenting here about what kind of tool you feel that would be, say if it were at Stanford University on view as a teaching complement to your science.
Yeah. What I'd like to, actually I'm going to jump in a little earlier before you said that, and that is when I give talks to clinicians, they will come up to me afterwards and they'll say, oh, what a marvelous talk, I learned so much. And I'll look them in the eyes and come on, be honest.
Yeah.
You didn't learn anything.
Mhm.
What you did was have your intuitions supported.
Mhm.
And that's this point that part of our visceral reactions
That's
are
right.
giving a sense of safety that our ideas
That's
are.
right.
The area of education, there are educators very interested in creating safe classrooms for the kids. Safe classrooms doesn't mean that teachers carry guns. Safe classrooms are the cues of safety are being given to the children. Likewise, intensive care units. You have to think about what's going on in the medical world. It's all about surveillance, cleanliness, and billing codes. So you have to go into the intensive care units and realize how noisy and disruptive and chaotic they are to a nervous system that is already so challenged. So all the energy, all the information is a threat. So how can the body heal itself? And the problem is medicine still hasn't come to the point of really understanding that it's the body that heals itself, and their job is to make the body feel sufficiently safe to exert its resources for replication
Right.
and healing.
That's medicine, but
Well, medicine,
you see
education.
what is destroying the possibility that you're offering is the fact that this reptile is in a room with 20 other reptiles, and you know what?
Right. No one's there to enable it to be a mammal. No
Right.
one's there to give it the cues. Oh, give up your vigilance, give up your defenses. I'm there for you. No.
But you see, this is why I'm saying that it must be a 500-year project or something. We've been on this earth for what was it, a billion years, something like that.
But Terry, if you realize, if you think of that, let's say those pathways and the diversions from the pathways of, let's say, Cyvolution, the pathways have been very consistent. They're about leadership that wants power and acquisition, and not about leadership that wants connection.
That's not Cyvolution, though.
It's not allowing Cyvolution, is what I'm saying.
That's what doesn't allow it. Yes.
Yeah. But it's giving us that information that, so it's not like we don't know what needs to happen. You talk to people, you know, if as you talk to them and say, look, I really would like a safe world, and they'll say to you, then the people will be lazy. They won't do anything. Yeah. And I'm saying you want a safe world that encourages boldness. And
the only hope we have is that our religious, you know, we are religious animals.
Yeah.
And
Well,
religion is not an added on.
yeah,
Religion.
let's change that. So you're going to have to clarify. Do you mean
Okay.
spiritual or do you mean religious?
Say it again.
Do you mean that we're a spiritual species?
No, we're not spiritual. There's no such thing as spirituality. Everything that vibrates, vibrates. It's got mass. There's nothing, just we have to eliminate these words, spiritual. So we are mechanisms refining energy. So
we can create a safer place of that point.
That for sure.
We can say that our interpretation of those vibrations.
But how will it get down? You see, what I'm talking about is promoting a program that will teach people that can teach the program. And you know, how did quadruped become biped? It's on that scale.
Well, and also when we start talking about laterality and shared responsibility and specialization of
all that comes, excuse me, I'm saying all that comes when I have a coherent conscience. I don't have to put any values on it. Nothing that anybody's ever thought of matters. The conscience will guide my actions, and I'm sure it'll come out very much like you know, we have moments when we recognize the values, but so
Terry, what I've been working on is, in my understanding of evolution and how I use it, I see it as pushing. It's a journey towards sociality, which is a journey towards connectedness. Now, what does that lead to? It can be the foundation of a cyvolution. It is not cyvolution.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly.
Because the safety and accessibility.
Right. What evolved is 3 disparate internecine information processors, and what cyvolution brings an intercommunication.
Yeah.
That,
see, I would give you one more a tool to use within that, and say you have the 3 sources of information, but the Homo sapien has actually this circuit that enables those, basically places them into a hierarchical system. The system functions hierarchically when safe. When not safe, this falls apart. But when safe, you have the hierarchy, which exploits the best of all 3.
We have to eliminate hierarchy between these information processors.
It's a terminology, because I think you're misinterpreting. I'm not saying it depresses or suppresses. I'm saying it coordinates. So it
all right.
It exploits to the best these other systems without allowing them. I'm going to use the word allow. Of those systems to go into defensive states, because once they're in defensive states, then the energy gets dissipated and
exactly. So we'll put up our College of Humanology, and the person will get their syllabus, and how many will sign up? Well, where do we begin, in other words?
Well, think about this for a moment. Think about the syllabus as having basically foundations, and the initial foundation
absolutely
totally experiential. So the person becomes re-embodied, and with the gift of re-embodiment, where do you go with that? And
I mean, is there, how can we, I mean, what we're talking about, embodiment, is not something we do. It's something that we recognize as possible. And
I refine that. It's something we allow to occur, because once we
no,
get
it's going to occur no matter what you think.
well, the issue is again, this is a line.
As at glacial timelines.
It's the issue is not, our society thinks that everything we do is intentional without an understanding of what I would call the emergent properties of what it is to be a human. And this is part of what has to be in your college, an understanding of what are the properties of being a human and how we compromise those by spending our resources literally in states of defense and threat.
But we can look at where we are right now. If you walk into a classroom and you mention the vagus nerve, there usually isn't anybody who is even aware that they have a vagus nerve. So the fact that your work has given us an owner's manual to how the psi-evolution or the phylogenetic history is the basis of our evolution, and that we are humans in quotation marks until we begin to understand the three centers and move from there, or already that will be a tremendous help to education to understand why the conflicts, why the post-Simian conundrum of our dualities. And then the transdisciplinarity movement, which carries the philosophy of logic of Lupasco and the hidden third, or the potential for the emergence of the third force in us, that is
of the religious force.
Right. Then, you know, those are principles that guide the embodied practice that all art schools, for instance, are working towards in craft and in participatory experiential work in performance art, or, you know, and then we move scientists in the direction of feeling, etc.
No, we cannot have aims like that.
No?
No, you create this inner being. The kingdom is within.
So
You create this inner being, and it, you see, we can't invent anything. We make no decisions. Everything is Schopenhauer. Man can do anything he wants. He just can't want what he wants. We're in the position to process and not to invent, or so how to allow exactly this inner process that can include more and do better.
see, I
But
would,
I just want to say, we need, your work is essential foundation to everything that I'm talking about. I would say, through your work, you produce candidates for psi-evolution. Is that too?
well, what I would say is, what I've learned from my work is that the core of humanity is lovely. The issue is, how do we allow the core to be expressed? That we are so concerned with the wrappers, the defensive shields around us, that we don't allow the core to be expressed. I use the word don't allow, and I have to be careful, because people listening will think that it's an intention.
But what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of room to work together on this process. I'm delighted myself.
Well, thank you, Terry. And I'm learning. And thank you, Susannah, for bringing me into this unusual family.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. So Hope to see you soon.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think our audience is mostly speaking Spanish, so unfortunately I'm not able to translate the comments that I see. They're not questions, but I think they're all supportive of the effort of trying to come to something where education itself can now begin to adapt and recognize the contemporary understanding of our conflictedness as defense machines, or as, you know, the way we still feel a great need to protect ourselves rather than become expansive and bold and creative in our environments of learning, so forth. So, Maria, I
Yes,
see you waving your hand.
Elder Chair, there are people saying that they are very much inclined to study what you two have proposed these days. And of course, that will take some time to integrate and then to see how it operates within themselves. And also the second step, how they can be transferred to their areas of activities. And I think this is very, very good. So they will need more resources to, and also dialogue and to see what it's all about.
Right.
Another point is that that was raised in the chat. It's to Dr. Porges saying that isn't there possible that sometimes in a very unsafe situation, because of the need of salvation, it's necessary an integration of that happens, an integration because of the stress and because of the challenge of the situation was so great that because of unsafety, you have to find a new stage of being safe. Is it possible that it may occur?
Well, let's be very careful about describing this, because the answer is yes, but there are basically few people who can do this.
Yeah.
So if you're under that type of situation and you literally fragment and can't do that, it's not to be blamed. The issue is that the term is like, there are the stories of survivors in concentration camps where when I started developing the theory, I had forgotten about Viktor Frankl's book, which I had read when I was a graduate student. And I had this whole almost mechanistic worldview that if I created a safe environment, everyone would be wonderful. And that meant that if the environment wasn't safe, everyone would be taking care of it, basically trying to survive. I forgot about, quote, the angels. And there are people who function like angels under the worst situations. I talked to the Association for Foster Parents, and I was at this meeting and I met angels. So I met people who took into their homes with an open heart, really challenged and difficult kids. So you see this, that there are some that can do this, yes.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that I can do it.
Some people are really decent mammals.
Yeah. I think it's really remarkable about the compassion and benevolence and generosity that's within our species. And we have to celebrate that more than we do the acquisition of stuff. You know, more money, more grants, bigger houses. We have to really, in our culture, realize that the generosity of being a human being is beneficial to one who's even being generous. You get a lot back. You redefine who you are. It makes you feel better.
On that glorious note, I'm
Susannah, there are a few remarks that still refer to Jennifer that I would like to point out here. Joseph would like, is interested in carrying on with Jennifer a dialogue about Lupascu's concept of consciousness. And I think that is where we can forward this, his interest to Susannah also.
I
There were
replied,
some people
I
that
did,
wanted to ask about the strategies Jennifer proposes to students to recognize their own voice and listen to their own voice before they are able to interact with others and the voices of others. So they were interested in understanding a little bit how she deals with this problem. This is Adamo. And there's another person.
Well, Maria, let's
Yes.
address this one, voice.
Yes.
You have to have your own voice, but you have 3 different internecine voices all the time, automatically. You can't talk like that. You have to talk about the processes by which I could have a voice. Okay, that's my answer to that.
There is a prior integration to be done.
Yes.
Let me jump
Yes.
on that one.
Yeah.
First. In the mental health field, they talk about parts, and this is exactly what Terry. But if you take the parts and put them within the polyvagal theory, you have a part that's integrated and socially interactive. You have a part that's basically threatened and aggressive or fleeing all the time, and you have a part that is shutting down and withdrawn. So you have these different parts
Absolutely.
that represent the physiological scripts
Right.
of our ancestors, of our vestigial ancestors, but they come out and people use the term working with their parts. So Terry, the voices are the parts within the mental health world.
Yes, we'll use that metaphor, sure. Agreed.
Also, Sylvia also from Brazil in the chat, she would like very much to know if Jennifer has examples of projects that she is developing and where she can access these projects that she is developing. And
can I answer that? Could I answer that?
Yes.
In the chat, I have put Jennifer Gidley's website and her email, and anyone can write to her directly. I have also put the Entropy Institute website and the Polyvagal Institute website so that this dialogue can continue directly to the speakers.
Wonderful, wonderful. And there is one more question that is Victoria placed, which is she would like to know, it's also direct to Jennifer, but it's good that all the audience can hear it. She's trying to know how to create strategies to improve the exercise of voice in schools, because it's not only that you have to have a methodology for that, but you have to have specific strategies.
Absolutely.
And how do you constitute, and even to implement Terry's humanology, it's not only the content that you have to transpire, but you have to have specific strategies. And I think that we lack these strategies in the transdisciplinary work in general, because you have the epistemology, you have the methodology, and you have a lot of content, but we lack strategies, specifically because this is a kind of knowledge that applies not only to schools, which have a certain realm, a certain way of dealing with education. But if you go to an enterprise, if you go to a hospital, if you go to a doctor environment, the strategy has to be different.
Yes.
And so this is a very important issue also to deal with.
So our institute in San Francisco is prepared to work on the program initiative, of which we've already developed a certain degree of how we think it might go. We obviously need to speak to deans of universities who run humanities departments to ask them how the software of the present hardware could be adapting to Stephen's research that indicates that we actually carry a human right, a human obligation towards bringing this information. And of course, as Stephen, as you've, always indicated in your Faces of Shiva, we can recommend, we'd like to require, but we can recommend for those who are willing to, see their onus, see their obligation to begin some pilot programs.
We can offer
Yeah.
a course.
Let me jump on. I think Terry's going the same place. You can't push this on anyone. If you do that, it won't work. They have to want this. They have to come to you once they know it's there, and
Right.
that's how it will grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're there and you're there, and we're hoping that things, World Congress like this can begin to help us shape what people are asking for, what people very much would like to see as a change within these major institutions. Small schools like art schools, for instance, are struggling against the big technology companies to stay alive. And yet we've had a very integrated kind of program where there's flexibility around boundaries of teaching.
Well, let's see if we can't find a way to approach the universities. That's way I feel we have to begin. Have to teach the teachers that can teach, but it's through offering, not, how do we put it? We love to learn, but we hate to be taught. So the program, there is a way ahead, I think, and I'd like to pursue it with the help of everybody. So I appreciate very much this opportunity to speak with you all.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you for integrating or allowing me to be challenged to join your family.
No problem.
In a parallel way, we are working with our Polyvagal Institute to develop educational materials for different, let's say, niches. So one is, in a sense, business organizations, hospitals, clinics,
Right.
different specialty groups. What we're trying to do is have them come together and tell us what they want, and then we will work the type of teaching materials for them.
There's a preliminary step there.
Yeah.
You have to feed them the information that tells them what they want, so they can tell you what.
Exactly. They have to be, it has to permeate their world.
Right.
And the final comment is really the insights that you have had, my sincerest appreciation and respect to translate it, not just words, but into art, where the art carries what the physiology has taught me and my own personal experiences and the clinical feedback that I get all the time when I work with different groups. So
That's
Terry,
very gratifying. Thank you. Thank you.
So there are many people asking in the chat, and I just want to reiterate that the Congress website will eventually be carrying PowerPoints, papers, and the lectures are recorded so that outside of writing to me directly for information that they're requesting, the Congress website itself will be making this information available for, is it a year from another year live? 2 years. Okay.
Mhm.
So thank you all. Thank you very much. It's been
I
a
think,
most
yes, before you finish, I just would like to mention that Julieta, which is the organizer of this Congress from Mexico, that has been working like hell to put it together. And she was very much impressed with the presentations of today, and she said that it's going to be very important to have this content in the context of the whole Congress, and that the people will profit a lot from it. And so she would wholeheartedly thank you and Jennifer, you both and Jennifer, for this contribution. And she understands English very well, she understands French very well, and she understands Portuguese very well, but she has a little bit of difficulty in speaking it.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Followed it attentively, and she sent me many messages saying how wonderful, how great, I love it, but
Oh,
we have
nice.
to go on, you know, we have to see it again, we have to go over this material again. So she's very
I
Juliet,
look forward to it.
Julieta, we hope in 1 year we will all be able to come to Mexico City and
yes, that would be great.
give you a big hug. And if we could go across the street and have a glass of tequila, we would do that right now.
Fine.
So,
Very good. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and thank you, Susanna.
you're
Thank
very
you.
welcome, and have a good weekend, everyone.